Lauren McCoy, a record season ending in a national basketball championship. Today, President Biden and other top U.S. leaders honored the LSU women's basketball team. Madeline Adams reports from Washington, D.C.
Friday at the White House, the reigning national champions, the LSU Tigers, were honored during a ceremony hosted by President Joe Biden, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, and Vice President Kamala Harris. The LSU women's basketball team is the first Tigers team to visit the White House since Joe Burrow and the football team came here in 2020 after their historic national championship run. And 3 years later, more purple and gold in the White House. This comes nearly 2 months after LSU beat Iowa to claim the program's first title. And when you win a national championship, this is one of many rewards. The First Lady and the Vice President both spoke about how inspiring the team is, especially to the next generation of women in sports, and President Biden acknowledged the team's impact on the entire country.
Folks, we witnessed history, and here's what else we saw. Parents and children who watched every single one of your games together, sometimes driving 10 hours just to see you play. And then we've seen you take the time to talk to them, to laugh with them, to show millions of our daughters they can do anything as well.
President Biden also commented on the large amount of people in the crowd from Louisiana, and in true Tiger fashion, the ceremony ended with an LSU chant as the team left the East Room. Covering the Tigers in Washington, D.C., Madeline Adams, Fox 8, Local First.